Welcome, everyone. I'm Michael, Govan Director. It's so nice to welcome you here to this beautiful event surrounding Luchita Hurtado and her exhibition at LACMA and in Los Angeles, where she has been for many years. We're calling it a mid-career retrospective. And Hans Ulrich Obrist, I just want to say thank you, because our collaboration with the Serpentine Gallery to bring, as your great show came here with the book, and to bring it as it was coming back and make it into an exhibition here at this time, thanks to the magical work of Jenny King, our curator. So this has been a great event, and I'm just going to hand it over to Jenny, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Michael. And thanks to Michael, actually, for making this happen. I'm sure you know that exhibitions normally take 5 years to get on the calendar. And then when we found out about the Serpentine show, we knew it had to come here. And Michael really parted the Red Sea to, open up a gallery space that we could have your show. Thank you for coming out at the end of a very long week with lots of events. And thanks to Luchita for coming out. And Luchita, we had a huge opening on Tuesday, and then I was told that because you're 99, you needed days to recover before Saturday. And then I kept seeing on Instagram you were out every single night partying like a teenager. And every time I talked to someone this week, they were like, oh, and we're going to see Luchita now at her house, where Luchita came to the opening of the big Hauser party. So now at the end of the week, thank you for coming in the midst of a migraine headache. And we're so happy to have you here. Before we start, a few housekeeping details. The occasion why we're here is the wonderful retrospective exhibition, Luchita Hurtado, I Live, I Die, I Will Be Reborn. And the show is not actually open to the public. It's in member previews. However, my wonderful colleagues in the membership department made a special exception, and you should have gotten a blue member sticker when you got your ticket. But if you didn't, see one of my colleagues after the talk, because that will give you admission to the galleries. And that's one of the perks, so please consider becoming a member. And I also want to draw your attention to the beautiful catalog for the exhibition, which you can get at the kiosk on the plaza or in our bookstore in the Resnick Pavilion. And this was edited by Hans Ulrich and his colleagues at the Serpentine in collaboration with Ryan Good of the Hurtado studio. Is Ryan here? There he is. And as Michael said, we're so pleased to be presenting the show here, because Hans Ulrich's exhibitions have been described as seeds that can grow, and that's definitely what we did here. And Luchita, this is really LACMA's, I feel like it's your museum, and we have some photo evidence of that we'll see in a moment, but it's been an incredible privilege to show your work here. And I'm going to introduce Hans Ulrich now, Artistic Director of the Serpentine Galleries, also someone who needs a little introduction, but apropos our event here today, Hans Ulrich has recorded, I've read, over 2,000 hours of interviews with artists, and that is really his protest against forgetting, in reference to Eric Hobsbawm, is really kind of what led you to meet Luchita. So it's really fitting that we've been able to bring you back here today to continue that larger project. So quickly, before I hand it over, I just want to share these incredible photos that Cole Root of the Hurtado studio back there, Cole is the archivist, and shared these incredible photos with us. Not this one, which I got from LACMA's archives, but Luchita, do you recognize this?
Well, I haven't really looked. My memory at 99 is pretty short.
No, you have a great memory. So this exhibition was American Sculpture of the 60s in 1967 at LACMA, and that's an archival photograph. And here we have photos of the beautiful Luchita at that exhibition. This is 1967 at LACMA. I think that was the last one.
Yeah.
And Luchita, you were at the opening of LACMA.
Yes, I was. And I remember they had choices of what you wanted to eat, and it was like a great banquet. You could have anything to eat. So eating has always been very important to me. So that I remember distinctly, yes.
Thank you so much, and we should give another round of very warm welcome to Luchita Hurtado. And I wanted to also thank Michael and Jenny for this extraordinary collaboration and for the extraordinary way the exhibition has evolved here with many works which have never been seen. So it's a world premiere of many works, and also really for the miracle that this exhibition could happen in such a short time. Many thanks, of course, go also to Cello Montoya for organizing today's event. Again, I would always acknowledge Ryan, because we always say ESWRG. Everything started with Ryan Good, when Ryan rediscovered Luchita's work, and I think we're eternally grateful to Ryan. It's such an incredible pleasure and privilege to work with Ryan very closely. We're also very, very grateful, of course, to our team in London, and I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Rebecca Lewin and Joseph Constable, who is here from London, the curator of the Serpentine, Joseph Constable. And of course, many more collaborators on this show, also Luchita's family. We are welcoming, of course, many members of Luchita's family, John Malikan, Matt Malikan, Valerie Smith, Lucy, and Cosmo Malikan. A very warm welcome. And we are also very, very grateful to Hauser and Weir, to Graham Steele, who is here today, and of course also to Bettina Korek and Kevin McGarry, because as Jenny said, really it all started, and in a way it actually all started with Rosemarie Trockel in 1985, because when I was a teenager I went to Cologne to visit Rosemarie Trockel, and it was just a moment when Louise Bourgeois started to have her first exhibitions in Europe. And Rosemarie said, this is a really good thing, but at the same time she said, I'm very upset, because she said, there are many extraordinary women artists who have never had the recognition, and we should go to many, many other cities and see who are the Louise Bourgeois in town. And she said she as an artist couldn't do that, but she said, you know, it's something I should do. She gave me a task. So ever since, whenever I go to a city, I ask this question, and I asked this question here in LA to Bettina Korek and Kevin McGarry, and they took us to Luchita's studio, and that's really how this exhibition began.
And you,
I remember meeting, you see, Louis and her son in Taos. He had a house in Taos, and they were making houses out of cans, and to keep the adobe solid enough to build a house. And it was a challenge, quite wonderful. And his name was Louis. And being very friendly, we were friends, we were neighbors. And I told him how much I admired his mother, but that I'd never met her, and I'd hoped to meet her someday. But little did I know, you know, that it would be a part of my life. She has become a part of my life. Very wonderful work, really magic, really magic.
And I wanted to ask you to begin with the beginning, because you came to art very, very early. And you once told me that you came to art because of a butterfly.
Yes.
Can you tell us this story?
Yes, yes. Well, I loved butterflies, and one butterfly in particular has made me regret doing certain things that only children can do, like pin a live butterfly to the wall because you admire it. That was a miserable thing to do. And now I realize it. But then, you know, I was overwhelmed by the design on that because I was drawing figures with the hands above the head, you know. And on the wings of this butterfly, there was this drawing that I thought I originated. And indeed, nature was way ahead of me. So, yes, things like that you remember. And the image comes back. So that image will appear and disappear all during my lifetime, which has been a long one. I'm 99. So,
Now, as you will see in the catalog, Luchita has met really so many artists, extraordinary artists of the 20th century. There are so many stories with Frida Kahlo, with Duchamp. But today, I wanted to ask you about Tamayo. Tamayo, of course, because of the connection with LACMA, but also this exhibition will, after Los Angeles, in a yet again different version, it will continue to evolve, go to Mexico City, to the Tamayo Museum, and that will, of course, be another form of homecoming. So I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about your dialogues with Tamayo, how you inspired each other, and particularly also how you painted together in your kitchen.
yes, in my kitchen. Rufino and I was married to a man who was a journalist, and we spent much time together using color as a toy. How do you mix, you know, the color of that skirt or whatever we saw, and then we'd go at it and see who could do it first. And we would tell each other stories. He was at that time teaching at Dalton, a very big deal in New York at that time, Dalton. And Rufino was teaching there, and he would come back, and when we were together, he'd tell me stories. He said, it's very difficult for me. This little boy came to me and said, Mr. Tomato, Mr. Tomato, how do you mix orange? And he said, I felt it was time for me to go back to Mexico. But he did put up with a great deal.
Now, another very important epiphany, similarly to the butterfly, is when you saw for the first time photographs of Earth captured from space. And I think that was in 1947. You say you became a terrestrial. Can you tell us about this epiphany of what that meant?
Well, I feel that I'm family to everything on this earth because this is my planet. I live here, and I hope to work for its survival. Sometimes there are times when I think it's in danger, you know. We're emphasizing the wrong things sometimes, and I think it's time that we pay attention to what's going on in the world. And there is the positive and the not so positive. And it's like the song. How does it go? Eliminate the negative, accentuate the positive, and don't mess with Mr. in between.
Well, in an earlier interview that Hans Ulrich, that you and Luchita did that's in the catalog, you also, the two of you discussed that some of this recent work, that they're like your placards, your protest pieces, and we have some in the show. We have a photograph of the exhibition here. And that's become really important to you in your recent work.
Oh, yes. All through my life. that has been a very important part of my work. You know, use whatever you have, and if I have a voice at all, I'm going to use it to complain. Because it's the only way that you get anything done. And I think we should all complain, all together, a big voice saying no to the wrong things, and feeling terrestrial, feeling that the earth, that you're a sister to the tree. The tree helps you breathe, and you breathe in, and you and the tree are, in together. You are together, dependent on each other. So I think we should keep that in mind and take care of this place. This little blue ball in black space, yes. And when you see it as a little blue ball in space, in black space, you have absolutely the right to complain and to love, both. Yes.
Very, very important. And of course, we have many of these images here in the background of this new world. And you once told us, you told Jenny and me, that these words were actually also eventually for demonstrations. They were like, how do you call them in English? Pancards or like placards?
Yeah, Andrea says protest signs. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrea Bowers is here, who wrote a wonderful text for the catalog. A big round of applause for Andrea Bowers. Yeah, they are for demonstrations.
Yes. Well, I'm not doing any demonstrations anymore. I feel that I've outgrown them. I'm too tired. And so it's in the past, but I encourage everyone to do it.
Now, in the background, we had also earlier some very early drawings, and of course, we had many of them in London. Jenny found even more for the Los Angeles show, and very often in these early drawings, there are totemic figures. And I wanted to ask you, because you will see when you go through the exhibition, there is an eternal return of these totemic figures. They are dancing in landscapes, they're dancing in nature. Can you tell us a little bit about how these totems arrived in your work, and also the connection to the pre-Columbian research you made?
Well, prehistory has always enchanted me. I mean, how did we live in caves? How did we survive the dinosaurs? How did we, it's a big story. It wasn't just Adam and Eve. You have to really remember that the earth was a very heavy, thick ball made of mud. And the first living things that were in that ball that were the worms, who irrigated it enough to soften it and then grow things that we could eat. And so we have to thank the worms, not Adam and Eve.
Not Adam and Eve. And Hans Ulrich and I, we've discussed this before, that sort of, you look at the work and it's almost like, as you have said, many lives, many different bodies of work. But what you're saying, this connection to prehistory, it is something I think that connects all of your work, is that there's this through line of your connection. You feel a really strong connection to nature, to prehistory, to plants. And I think that's something that connects all your work. Yeah, and this work, you have the one that's on our screens now, you have a story, I think, about the woman who first wanted to buy this. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's true. All those people that they find a skeleton of a young girl ages ago, walking by herself alone. And you wonder, what she was thinking about. If she was thinking about something very important. If, she had thoughts of the caves, of how she would survive. Because survival was just the main problem in those times. And I went to see the prehistoric sites when they were still there to see. And I took my 9-year-old son to see them, and I think that's how Matt became an artist. When we went to Lascaux and all along the coast, because there are things found in people's houses, people's gardens, things from prehistory. And they found lately, I think it was a few months ago, they found the skeleton of a bear on a table, and it was in the center. The head was in the middle of a table, and those prehistoric sites are monumental and very important. Time to plant the vegetables, and time when the sun hits a certain point, and the Jantra mantras in India, all these things that had to do with survival.
And of course, it brings us also to the amazing photographs you took of very prehistoric sites in Mexico. And we found this in Calle d'Art, and actually it's wonderful that the photographs are included here in the show. They weren't in the London show, but we also saw an article you published in Calle d'Art.
Yeah.
Wolfgang Pahlen wrote the article, and you did the photographs. Can you tell us a little bit, because it's extraordinary that we all know you as an extraordinary painter, we know your extraordinary drawings, but I think very few people know that you are also an extraordinary photographer. There's a whole photographic oeuvre to be discovered. Can you tell us about these photos?
Yes, well, that was very Pahlen. Pahlen was a very talented man, and we were married a week, I think, after we met. And then the world became our playground. And he became my teacher also. So he taught me a great deal about the world. I remember going to a museum on 59th Street in New York. And he said, oh, this is a great museum. There are things there you don't see anywhere else. And I saw this necklace in the show, and I love jewelry. And I thought, oh, that's like an Egyptian necklace, and it's good. And the closer I came, the more confused I became, because it was made of human fingers. And it was sewn together. And so what you saw of this necklace that was so beautiful from afar became, human figures with dirty nails. Incredibly painful to watch, to see.
And what about the photographs? Because we have the photographs here from Calle d'Art. Can you tell us about these photographs?
Well, the photographs were Pauline's idea, too.
Yeah.
I think you're giving yourself short credit, though. That you picked up a camera and you were natural, right?
Well, he said, take them. Take photographs. And when Pauline said something like, take photographs, you took photographs. So I learned a lot. In time, I learned quite a bit. And it was a wonderful life. But then I lost my 5-year-old child, and it became another world that I was just interested in having children. And I married Mulligan, and we had wonderful children. So, and John, my John, John Mulligan there, yes, he's here. He's amazing. He looks after me. He comes in and says, "Did you have your pills?" Yes.
And Luchita, talking about the photographs, there are also your shadows, because it's actually very extraordinary when Ryan showed us for the first time, these photographs in your archive. You took for many years photographs of your shadow. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Well, they amazed me. The photograph of me in Europe, in Asia, all these photographs I took of myself, I was very intrigued with where I was in the world. And my shadow and my hands became very important. I would go like that, and just the shadow of the hand changed through the years. And you do change as you grow old. In my photographs, I have a history of how I have changed. When you have, a problem with your fingers and they swell like my hand is now, you accept it, and you think, "Isn't that strange?" And accept it, and then do exercises, and help yourself. I think we all go through that, and one should just accept it, exercise your hands or your eyes or try to improve the situation without too much trouble.
You heard it here, how to live to 99. Now you know the secret.
And enjoy it.
And there is also a secret not to eat sugar, right?
No sugar, no. No, poison, it's poison. Don't eat sugar.
Well, I said to Luchita, what is your secret? And she said, no refined sugar. And I think that was a shock to a lot of us who love sweets.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Well, you have a choice. And occasionally anything is good, but I don't think it's very healthy to have a constant dessert with your meal, it doesn't appeal to me. Sugar.
Now we talked about your photography. The amazing thing is that there are so many dimensions to your work, because there is also your work as a fashion designer, which I wanted to ask you to tell us about. Because the first time when we visited your studio apartment, we discovered this extraordinary cupboard where you basically told us that for 60 or more, 70 years, you have never bought clothes. You've made them. Can you tell us a little bit about your extraordinary fashion design, which is it's another aspect which has to be discovered one day in an exhibition?
Well, I've always loved clothes, and I have ideas about clothes. And so I couldn't afford the clothes I liked. So I started making it. I made all these clothes, and I had a knack. And when I went to art school, I chose to go to Washington Irving School in downtown LA. We lived way up Dyckman Street. It was really almost leaving New York, And I chose to go to Washington Irving, which was, I think, on 3rd Street or something like that. And they gave art. They had a good art department. They also had a department of design and art. And I chose the art. And I didn't tell my mother because I knew she would disapprove. So she learned that I had taken art only after, you know, when I graduated, and she could never accept any of that. So I really felt it was my right to decide who I would be. And the other girls were the ones that taught me about music and, yes, films, everything. They were my teachers. Yeah.
So maybe we should look, but maybe one last question before we come back to the paintings and the show. There is also, yeah, what, you had a question?
Well, Hans Ulrich brought up your designs, but you haven't mentioned the shirt you're wearing.
Yeah, Luchita designed it.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true, absolutely. Yes, that's very nice. And it looks very handsome on you. Very attractive.
Now there is you as a fashion designer, then there is a whole other aspect which has to be discovered, which is your diaries. We spoke with Ryan about that, and it's very little known that Luchita has extraordinary diaries, that Luchita is an extraordinary writer. Can you tell us about your diaries?
Well, I've always kept that diary because I like to go back and read some of it once in a while. It's another person, you see. As you grow older, you become other people. And that young person that you're reading about with children, etc., is no longer in existence. So it's quite an adventure life. On the whole, it's like I said, a banquet that you have a choice of so many incredible pleasures. We're given these senses, you know, these marvelous eyes and ears to hear music, and we're really very. I'm very grateful for the way I'm made, and I don't know who's in charge, but I agree. So, yes, that's it.
So Jenny, should we maybe speak about a few of the series in the exhibition, about a couple of the important, because we have a few images,
Yeah.
now we have these.
Well, we have so many beautiful works that people are excited about. Well, we have your nature drawings, which were a new series, and this amazing photo of you in your garden at Mesa Road in the Santa Monica Canyon. And there's so many of these nature drawings. Maybe do you want to say something about, you know, this regular practice?
I had such fun doing them, you know, because nature is so talented. Everything's been done and designed and colored, and the whole thing is such a joy. And you have to stop and smell the roses. You really do. You look around you, and you're surrounded by magic. So that's where sometimes I will be very sad about how people, you know, they don't give that any time to smell the roses. And I think we should all use our full capacity.
And you've actually once told me that trees can be like friends, and
Yes.
you've recently started to paint
Yes.
amazing trees again.
Yes. Trees are your relatives. You're surrounded by relatives who are helping you and feeding you, etc., etc. And hug a tree today.
Can you? John mentioned, when John Mulligan saw these drawings, he said they were so you because you cannot take a walk with Luchita without her stopping and picking up a leaf for a branch. And if you see your home, also, your home is really like an artwork. There are just amazing nature objects everywhere. And so John said, oh, this is so my mother, when he saw these drawings, that there are always these magical nature objects around you.
Yes, that's true. Yes, and it's to be seen and enjoyed, and that's what I wanted my children to do, to see and enjoy, and he did. He did. He responded. Wonderful, wonderful, and we're still looking. You know, we share. When we go for a walk, you know, it's marvelous, marvelous to be with my John. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Now, Luchita, the most recent works in the exhibition have to do with birth. They were just, I don't know if you have
Would you,
images.
hold on, back.
Look, they are here, these paintings.
There we go, there's one.
Yeah, and you did these paintings just before the opening of the London exhibition, and you told us that it has a lot to do that you feel that life is in danger and you want to celebrate birth. Can you tell us about these recent paintings?
Well, they are the actual birth. It's I think the most extraordinary thing that you give birth. How you give it comes with pain, and it's the worst pain in the world, and it's the most beautiful end of the pain. It's part of it all, and so I did paintings of birth, and how we come to be here still, and. I hope for many years to come, you know, with the help of everybody. Yes. Yeah. No. No.
We have these pictures.
Yes, hold on. We're going to fast forward. You're getting, whoops, there we go.
Because of course, the exhibition oscillates really between, you know, more abstract paintings and more figurative paintings. And when we installed the show in London, you gave a particular importance to these paintings, and they're also here really central. Can you tell us about how this series began? Because it made me think of a conversation I had many years ago with Maria Lasnik, my friend in Vienna. Maria was always saying that she wanted to do body awareness painting. How can we actually paint body awareness? Yes. Can you tell us about how...
Yes. Well, all you have is yourself. At one point in my life, I said, you came into this earth, you know, absolutely just you. That's all there was. It's you. And that's... In Venezuela, Indians, the women, when they're about to give birth, find a very sharp stone, and they retire to the river, and that's where the child is born, and they cut the umbilical with a sharp stone, and this is the beginning. For the Red Indians, the Colorado Indians, and I went to see them. I went to meet them. They don't like contact with the outer world. They're very difficult to find. So, yes, life is full of treasures. So, yeah. No, I've had fun. I really have. I have much to thank the world for, yeah. Including meeting you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Shall we have more questions or shall we open it?
Yeah, are there questions? Should we open it to the audience? Are there questions? And I can take the microphone. Oh, cellos go on. Okay, we're good.
Hello. Luchita, you are an extraordinary artist, and I know that you have partnered with amazing artists and your children as well. Can you talk at all about how you've influenced each other over the years, you and your partners and your children as well?
How have your partners and children, have you influenced each other as artists?
I think everybody's born is an artist. I think you lose it because the world takes it from you. But everybody's an artist. And if you realize that, you are an artist, your life becomes an artist's life. You do what you want. You do what you feel you are due. So that's how I measure life. Life has to be enjoyed. You have all these, you have hearing, this wonderful, able to hear, to see with your eyes, to hear with your ears. Enjoy it. Live it. Live it. Don't let that go to sleep. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Okay, there and then you next.
Hello, Luchita. We've met before in the early 70s, and I was wondering if you remember visiting the Woman's Building in Los Angeles, and if you had anything you wanted to reflect on or recall about from that time.
Yes, of course I do. I remember the Women's Building. I remember sending a portfolio with the man, and he came back with 3 shows. And we sent the same portfolio out with a woman, and she didn't have one show. And that was unbalanced, I thought. And I realized that the women had a problem. And indeed they did. So I think that has slowly turned. Not completely, but I think women have a voice now, a very good voice. Loud shouts work. And that's fine. Whatever it takes.
And Luchita, you were a member of the original Los Angeles Council of Women Artists, which was actually founded in part in protest of LACMA and our infamous 1971 Art and Technology program, which was all male artists. And you were part of a subgroup, and we have this great photo of your group.
Yes, yes. A very aware group. And I still see them. Alexis Smith, Via Selmans, and I have a photograph, and of course I remember, and there was someone who has become a very important part of the Whitney too.
Yeah, Barbara Haskell.
Barbara Haskell, that's right. It's a big change, and it's all to the good, I think. I think the other was not balanced enough. I think should be allowed.
Yeah, which is why, one of the women's group protests said, henceforth half of all exhibitions, one-person exhibitions at LACMA shall be by women artists. So it only took 50 years to get your show here, but a single artist show by Luchita Hurtado.
And it's also interesting, that actually one of your very early exhibitions was in the Women's House in Los Angeles in the 70s. And we haven't spoken about that because that's a whole other body of work, which are, of course, these paintings in the exhibition here with words. And it's almost a reconstruction of that show. Can you tell us about this exhibition? Because it's one of your very few solo shows at that time.
Yes. It was a group of women who really, Mako Francis, she was married to Sam Francis, and Mako had hair down to her knees, and she cut her hair. And there were repercussions because she was married to a very nice person, Sam. I love Sam, but she had no nonsense from Sam, and Sam was full of weird things. Yes.
It's these works. You showed these works, in this exhibition. Yeah. Do we have those in the slideshow?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, we don't have those in the slides.
Can you tell us about these works?
Well, they're words.
Yeah.
They're words, and I used words in my art. I began to, say no in my art. No is a good word to learn. Yeah, and I did use it, and other things too. Yeah.
Do we have more questions? Yeah, I think there's a question.
I don't have a question. I have an observation about Luchita. I've been fortunate to be good friends with her for a long time, and we talk a lot. And I've learned a lot why she is 99 and thriving. And she's a person who has a real love of life, a real sense of curiosity and interest. She always wants to see new things, learn new things. She has an incredible sense of humor. And we used to call it her fine appreciation of the ironic. And she also, her life has not been easy. It's been wonderful, but not always easy. And she has an ability to let things go past her that she doesn't need to let them eat at her. She wants to go forward into all that's there. And I've always teased her that she's going to live to be 120. And I have no doubt of that. Yeah.
I think there was a question in the back on the stairs. Yeah.
We began this talk thinking about all the extraordinary women artists we don't know about, and for a while you were one of them. And I'm wondering if you ever identified as a woman artist, or if gender was ever something that really configured into your work, or was a question you grappled with as you were working.
I always felt close to women, and we used to meet once a week. And I remember really enjoying those meetings and talking about work and who was doing what. And, for the first time, you had women talking together about art. And I remember, I forget her name, who it was. You were supposed to stand up and give your name as an artist. And it was situated in this large space we were sitting in. And I got up and said my name, and I said, Luchita Mulliken. And there was a voice in this space that shouted out, Luchita what? And for the first time I realized that I was not Luchita Mulliken as an artist, I was Luchita Hurtado. And that was it, yes, that was it. But it's a hard, if you're born in 1920, like I was, you see, it's a very hard thing to change because you're born into this world that is unbalanced, especially in Latin America. And men are allowed, I remember I had a 2-year, he was 2 years younger than I, my brother. And when my brother was just sitting there, you know, very still, doing nothing, he was meditating. He was thinking about grand things. But if I was caught just sitting there, my grandmother would say to me, idle hands tempt the devil. And she would have me sew a hem, take it apart, and sew it together again. And I learned how to sew, but I also didn't have those minutes of meditation. So I don't know whether I lost or gained in that instance. But it hasn't hurt me, I don't think.
I think there's one back there, another question.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit more about the imagery of the natural world in your paintings, specifically the relationship between the human and the non-human worlds?
It's all there, you see. A plant, a tree, everything is there. It has veins. A leaf has veins.
We have the leaves here.
Yeah, feathers. I think those are the feathers, right?
Yeah. Yes.
These are in Taos, is that right?
Yes.
Because we haven't spoken about those, because you were telling us once that you always had feathers in all your houses. Feathers?
Feathers too, yes. Because the Indians that I knew in Venezuela, they call them Los Indios Colorados, the red Indians, and they paint themselves with bright red. And they're individuals. They have a tribe, and they live their own lives, and they don't want too much contact with the outside world. And that's right, because it's the only way they're going to keep their own life. It's very dangerous to become too much of the Western world.
And these paintings with the feathers, as Jenny said, they were painted in Taos.
Yes, where you have this, you know, they have in Taos, New Mexico, they have races where the old men in their minimal costumes have branches in their hands, and they encourage the young boys to run. But nobody wins, you see. They just want them to run. And they encourage with these branches. Hit them on the legs. Run faster. No one's racing. It's just what they have to do.
Cello is giving me the time signal, but I want to ask Hans Ulrich if there's a last question you want to ask Luchita.
No, I think you should ask the last question, but I have the second last question. So the second last question is, I've actually got the third last question. I have two more questions. One is, I wanted to ask you, you're born in 1920, and so much about the world has changed in your long life, but what would you say has changed the most?
Oh, every week, I mean, there's something new, computers, and I have none of it because it takes up too much of your time, of your life. I see it. You see? I see it. You know, there's this family at a table having their food, and they're not talking to each other. They're with these things, and their thumbs are going great guns. So I don't think that's healthy.
Now, given your extraordinary wisdom, I wanted to ask you, because I see many young artists here today in the room, and Rainer Maria Rilke wrote this wonderful little book, which is an advice to a young poet. I wanted to ask you, before then handing over to Jenny for the last question, I wanted to ask you, what would in 2020 be your advice to a young artist?
Go your own way. I mean, live life, enjoy life, and you know, look at the world and share it, because that's all an artist does. Share his life, her life, and I think that's very generous, and it can be very effective in all branches of government, everywhere. So contribute what you want, contribute what you can, and change things if you want to change things.
Beautiful.
That's it.
Okay, last question. I get the last question. You turn 100 on November 28th, and we at LACMA have our own ideas about how we want to celebrate, but I want to hear, how do you want to celebrate your 100th birthday? What are your plans?
For doing what you have to do, you know, like go to sleep. To me, that always is the best. Absolutely, yes. Yes, you know, like people will ask me, what are you going to do for New Year's? And I always say what I usually do, sleep. Because it has never, you know, why would, on the East Coast, I lived in the village, and what you found were firecracker paper. You know, the streets were full of these papers, and that's one way to celebrate, but it isn't. I mean, the poor dogs on those days, they have no peace. No.
I mean, there could not be a more magical conclusion. Luchita, thank you so
Thank you.
much.